Okay, so you welcome back. I'm just from recording one video and then my mic was off, so I have to take it all over again, but there's no problem. So the videos I sent to you talking about inline block and inline block elements. Okay, so we are going to know what are inline elements, what are block elements, and what are inline block elements, and what are their characteristics. So let me start by creating a div, and I'll give it a class. Okay, I'll call it block element. Block element. And now I will just copy it and paste it. I'll change this div to a span, and I will call it inline element. Okay, so now we have two elements, a div which is a block element and a span which is an inline element. Now this name is not the one making it a block element or an inline element. No, I'm just calling it like that so that we should understand our CSS easily, but it's not actually the name that makes it an inline or a block element. Now let's do something to both of them. So I would say that the block element, now this is what we call a grouping selector. I want to give two properties to this I want to give a single property to two different elements. So I call the first element and I call the second element. So we call it grouping. I am giving the same CSS to two different elements. So I now say border 1 pixels solid red. Now the first element does not have anything, the div does not have anything, so let me put something inside, hello, and the span I will say world. Okay, so when I will go on my console, I will say hello, I will say hello world. Now let me open with live server, and now we have it, we have hello world. Okay, they both have borders, so they both have a 1 pixel border, and you can see that the world, which is a span element, okay, when I will hover on it, you will see, okay, so you can see span here, you can see span. The world, which is a span element, is not occupying 100% of the width. Meanwhile, the block element is occupying 100% of the width. Now, so what does that mean? It means that a block element will always occupy 100% of the container in which it is found, okay, of its parent container. Of its parent container, okay. So the block element will always occupy 100% of its parent container by default. By default. Now the inline one, okay, inline element will always occupy, okay, just the space, okay, just the space needed by its content to display. So if I increase this text to world of good human beings, you will see that it increased, right? It increased, and the width now is just the content that is inside. So an inline element will occupy just that space. Now by default, okay, span and div elements are inline, okay, for span, and block for div by default. So by default, this one is block, this one is span. You have other block elements like article, like header, like footer, like what again? You have many, there are many, like section and more. Most of the elements that you have are block elements. On the other hand, you have some inline elements like the anchor tag, okay, like the span that we already have here, images. But again, there are some other, I don't remember, but when we will be using them, we will remember. So you see that an inline element will occupy just the space needed. So if I hide another text here and I say click me, this element would come side by side to this one, because there's still space beside this one. You see, this word is taking just this space, so there's still space for any other element to come and display here. But this one is greedy, it takes the whole space, so that any other element that will come will display but on the next line. Are we there? So let me just put a break. And then you will see that. Now let's try to give a margin to each of them. Okay, so they already have the same properties. So this is it. You see that the break is now here, even though it's not showing. Let me come here. Yeah, that's a break, but we cannot see it. But now let me give to this element a margin. Okay, I'll give them a margin top, a margin bottom, a margin left, a margin height. So I want them to all have 10 pixels each. And now you see that the block element will have a margin top, bottom, left and height. But on the other hand, the inline elements, which are A and span, they are not going to have those properties. So they have margin left and height, but they don't have margin top and bottom. That is because they are inline elements. So inline elements does not read margin top and bottom. So inline okay. Now instead of hiding margin top, bottom, left, height, we can still rewrite it like this: margin 10 pixels. Okay, let me just comment and let me comment it. Instead of writing it like this, we can just say margin 10 pixels. This means the same thing as all of this. Okay, if it is that now the margin left and height are different, okay, let's say 5 pixels. What we'll do is that we'll just say something like, okay, let me comment this one: margin, the first value is for top and bottom, and the second value is for left and height. So this again means the same thing as this one. Okay, now if you want to set the value for each differently, okay, so you want to, we will now use this other method. We will say, we'll say margin, the first value is for the top, so we want that the top should be 10 pixels. The next value is for the right. Okay, so we want that the height should be 3 pixels. The next value is for the bottom. We want that the bottom should be 2 pixels. And the third value is for the left. We want that the left should be 5 pixels. So this, okay, is the same as this. So these are shorthands that with time you'll be able to use. Now let's continue and talk about and now let's try to do something else. Let's try to give a height of 100 pixels to these elements and a width of 300 pixels and see what is happening now. So as you're just from saying, inline elements will not inherit properties like will not read properties like height and width. So only block elements are going to have these properties. Now that means that how are we supposed to work with inline elements if they have this funny behavior? So to solve the issue of inline elements, what we do is that we change their nature, we change their properties. So let me call that class again. Now I will not hide a code inside here because the code I want to hide is just for this particular element. It's no more for both, right? It's no more for both. So just for this one, I want to change its display. Remember, I said by default it is an inline element because spans by default are inline elements. So if I change the display now to block, you will see that it will behave like a block element, and now you have world that is behaving like a block element. Are you seeing that? So they are now similar, identical. So that's a big thing. If you can also say that you want to change the property of a block element to inline, and now you will see that we inverted the whole side. A hello now is an inline element. Now let's talk about inline block, because we now know that inline elements will not read properties like margin top and margin bottom, but will only read properties like margin left and height. We also know that inline elements will not read properties like height and width, but block elements will read all those properties. What now if you want to write a nice layout? Okay, you have hello world and you have click me. You still want click me to be let me say an inline element with some block element properties. So how do you do that? You come and you say, okay, let me call this anchor tag, and I will say display inline block. Okay, now that it is inline block, if you come here and hover, you see again that it occupies just its space. Okay, just the space required, and you cannot even notice that it is an inline block element now. But if we go and give it these properties, and again let's give it a height and a width so that you see, you will now see that it is actually having a height and width. Look at that blue box, that is the height and the width. You see again that there's a margin top, a margin left, a margin bottom, and a margin height. So now this element is an inline element which now can read some block element properties. It can now read margin top and margin bottom. It can read height and width, but by default it will still occupy just the space in which its content is. That's it for inline block and inline elements. We meet tomorrow for another class. Stay blessed, and I hope that you will watch this video again and again so that you understand all the concepts. Thank you.